Good day, class. I hope you're all doing well today. Welcome to our lesson. My name is Teacher Giovanni, and today we'll be exploring a very powerful poem called War is Kind by Stephen Crane. This poem is going to help us learn how to determine the tone, mood, and purpose of a text. These are important skills that will help you better understand what an author is trying to communicate. Now let's dive right in. But before we read the poem, let's first get our minds focused on the theme of the poem, war and peace. Here on the screen, you can see two different images. On the left, there's a battlefield. And on the right side, a peaceful landscape. Now, I want you to think about these images for a moment and take a deep breath and let's reflect. Woo! Now, what do you see in these pictures? How do they make you feel? And when you hear the word war, what comes to your mind? All right. Before we begin, let's go over to our learning outcomes for today. First, identify the tone and mood of War is Kind by Stephen Crane. Number 2, discuss the author's use of irony to express his purpose. Number 3, demonstrate understanding through a collaborative activity using technology tools.
Wow.
Now, are you ready? Let's get started. Alright, now that we've got our thoughts flowing, let's transition to our poem for today. War is Kind by Stephen Crane explores the reality of war, and as we read, we'll look for clues to help us understand the author's feelings about it. Before we begin reading, let's quickly review some important concepts that will help us understand the poem. First, let's talk about tone. Tone is how the author feels about the topic they're writing about. For example, if I say, I'm so excited for today with a big smile, the tone is happy, right? So, tone is all about the author's attitude. So in War is Kind, the author's tone is actually very sarcastic, even though the words might sound positive at first. Next, we have mood. The mood is how the text makes you feel as a reader. Does it make you feel happy, sad, angry, or something else? Now, we'll look for clues in the poem that shows the mood the author wants to create. Then there's irony. So, irony is when the author says one thing but means the opposite. For example, when Crane says war is kind, he is actually saying the opposite. It's a way of criticizing the war. And finally, the purpose of a text is the reason the author wrote it. So, in this poem, Crane wants us to see how horrible war really is, even though some people might glorify it. Now, let's move on to the poem. We're going to listen to it and follow along with the text. I want you to pay close attention to the tone, the mood, and the message Crane is trying to convey.
War is Kind by Stephen Crane. Do not weep, maiden, for war is kind. Because your lover threw wild hands toward the sky, and the affrighted steed ran on alone. Do not weep, for war is kind. Hoarse, booming drums of the regiment, little souls who thirst for fight. These men were born to drill and die. The unexplained glory flies above them, Great is the battle god, great and his kingdom, a field where 1,000 corpses lie. Do not weep, babe, for war is kind, because your father tumbled in the yellow trenches, raged at his breast, gulped, and died. Do not weep, war is kind. Swift, blazing flag of the regiment, eagle with crest of red and gold, these men were born to drill and die. Point for them the virtue of slaughter, make plain to them the excellence of killing, in a field where 1,000 corpses lie. Mother whose heart hung humble as a button on the bright splendid shroud of your son, do not weep, war is kind.
Alright, great job, class! Now that we've heard the poem, I want you to take a look at the poem again. You should have a printed copy or the text on your screen as you read it, no? So I want you to underline or highlight words and phrases that stand out to you, especially those that seem to show the tone, the mood, the irony of the poem. Now that we've read the poem, let's dive into a fun and interactive activity. We're going to break into two groups to analyze specific stanzas of the poem. I want you to work together and identify words or phrases that shows the poem tone, mood, and author's purpose. So I already assigned you in the classroom, R&R GCAS classroom. So group 1, you'll look at stanzas 1 and 2. And group 2, you'll work on stanzas 3, 4, and 5. Alright. Now, you'll post your answers on Padlet. I already give the link in our G class. So make sure to include some reasons for your choices. Now, remember, tone is how the author feels, mood is how the reader feels, and irony is when the author says one thing but means the opposite. So let's work together and think critically about the poem's message. Alright, class, you have 5 minutes to work with your group. Remember to use Padlet to post your ideas, and once you've posted, take a moment to look at what your classmates have written. Now let's see if we can find patterns in the lines you have chosen. And while you're working, I want you to think about this question. What does Crane want us to understand about war through these lines? Alright, great job everyone! Now let's go over to your responses. I'll share what we've learned from your post on Padlet. Alright, group 1, you have focused on the first and 2 stanzas. So let's look at some of your phrases you found. So one of you mentioned, do not weep, maiden, for war is kind. Well, this shows us the tone. No, it's ironic. So Crane says war is kind, but we know that war causes pain and loss. Group 2, you work on stanzas 3, 4, and 5, and one of you wrote a field where 1,000 corpses lie. So this line helps create a sad and sorrowful mood. No, war is tragic, and it's something that no one should glorify. So, what's the main message here? So Crane uses irony to criticize how war is often glorified. The tone is sarcastic and the mood is heavy, sad, and sorrowful. Now to check how well we understand the poem, let's play a quick Kahoot quiz. Alright, so I've set up a few questions to test your knowledge of tone, mood, and irony in the poem. Are you ready? Alright, so just paste the code to the link I provided in our GC, in our classroom. So let's go! Great job for today, class. I'm really impressed with your engagement and your answers. You've learned how to identify tone, mood, and purpose in a literary text. And that will help you with many other poems and stories. Now, for your assignment, I'd like you to write a short paragraph about a poem on peace. And what tone would you use and why? Remember, we want to use tone to communicate a message just like Crane did in War is Kind. You can submit this on Google Classroom. Now, thank you for being such a great class today. I'll see you in our next session. Take care and keep up the good work. Bye!